Hello and welcome to this year's International Women's Day celebration, hosted by Women Plus in Geospatial, and affectionately known by many of us as WIG. My name is Denise McKenzie. I am the Partner for Community and Ethics at a new not-for-profit organisation called Place, and also a council member at the AGI. I'm also a co-author of the Location Data Ethics Charter known as the Locus Charter. But today I'm here as a member of the WIG Steering Committee and your host for today's event. As we move through the presentations and panel discussions, we encourage everyone to take a look at your social media of choice, tweet, post, chat, and really just share your thoughts and observations as we progress through the event today. Your voice and your thoughts matter. They matter to us and they matter to the rest of the world as we celebrate International Women's Day. My own Twitter handle is @SpatialRed, and the WIG's one is @GeospatialWomen. We would encourage you to use the Women Plus in Geospatial hashtag WIG4Change. This is also the Slido hashtag, and also the hashtags IWD 2022 and hashtag Break the Bias, which is the theme for today. As I mentioned, we also have a Slido. The details can be found on our website. And should be in the email you received if you registered through Eventbrite. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the event. Where we can, we will answer in Slido, and later on we will have a panel. So if you get inspired and you've got a question that you're keen for the panel to talk about, please add that into Slido as well, and we'll make sure that we try and get to as many of them as we possibly can. A final piece of housekeeping for the event is this is being recorded. It will be available immediately after the event on YouTube. So if unfortunately you can't stay with us for the full hour and a half and you need to step away, don't worry, you'll be able to come back and catch up later. Just to say though, we are doing this live. So if you are keen to watch the panel and to be adding your questions into the Slido for that, you will need to be on live to be able to make that work in the same time frame. So we're all here today as part of a global movement for International Women's Day. The theme is Break the Bias. And while, when we think of this theme, I'm sure it conjures immediate thoughts of bias in our workplaces, in whose voice is heard and who has power. I think this theme has a particular resonance for us as geospatial professionals as well. When we think of bias in the data we use or collect, the potential harms or benefits that can be realized through all of our amazing geospatial data and solutions. We as geospatial professionals have such a responsibility and an amazing capacity, I think, for doing good in this area of bias. And we'll explore some of that later on when we get into our panel. So, as a bit of an overview of agenda for today, I will shortly introduce a video by one of our WIG directors, Olive Powell, and she'll lead us into a presentation from some of our other directors and co-founders, Julia Wagemann and also Sabrina Szeto. This will give you kind of an overview and a journey of where we've come from with WIG, some of the really amazing developments that we've got coming and have just happened. So certainly one of those I know is the new website, if you've gone to have a look at that. And importantly, where we're going, where we want to see our future of this organisation and what we're doing going forwards. And so with that, following the presentation, we will move directly into the panel, and the names of all of those panelists are there, and I'll give them an introduction when we get to the panel space. But really what we're looking to do is, delve into this topic of bias to look at how we might take action in this space, look at the things that we know work, look at the things we know that are a challenge, both within our workplaces, but I think always also for us as geospatial professionals. And so with that, I'd love to wish everybody a happy International Women's Day. You'll see me back on screen at various points across the afternoon. I really hope you enjoy your time with us today. And but now I'd like to introduce Olive Powell, Director of WIG, and also the International Lead for the Geospatial Commission in the UK, to get us kicked off with the presentations.
Welcome to all of you joining us today celebrating Women Plus in Geospatial. I'm Olivia Powell. I'm one of the co-directors of Women Plus in Geospatial, and I'm delighted to be introducing today's event. Today is a really important day for our community and our network, because what started on International Women's Day in 2019 as a tweet and a Twitter list is now a wonderful community of more than 3,600 amazing individuals around the globe from 91 countries, and sharing their expertise and helping each other grow. So as we celebrate today our third birthday, I'd like to thank you all for your support and what you bring to one another. The network is only as good as you and your contribution, and it's all thanks to you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Julia Wagemann and Sabrina Szeto, my co-directors, and they will take you through our journey, our growth, our impact so far. So thanks again for joining us today, and have a good event.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Sabrina Szeto.
And I'm Julia Wagemann.
And together with Olive Powell, we are the directors of Women Plus in Geospatial.
The mission of Women Plus in Geospatial is to build an inclusive, global community, inspiring, uniting, and empowering all women plus in the geospatial domain to become strong leaders and change makers.
And our vision is forging a geospatial community where all genders can thrive. Our network's journey began with a tweet by Julia in 2019, one day before International Women's Day. She asked Women Plus in GIS, Earth observation, and geospatial mapping to join a Twitter list. And the response was overwhelming. Within one day, over 300 people joined this list. Since then, our network has really grown, and with the help of many enthusiastic volunteers, we've built out several programs. So in 2019, after the Twitter start, Julia and a team of volunteers led an Agora session at the Living Planet Symposium, where more people joined the network, including myself. This was followed by the launch of our LinkedIn page and the start of our very first international mentorship cohort. In 2020, as the pandemic took over the world, we held online development sessions to help people network and grow in their careers. We also highlighted the achievements of Women Plus in our LinkedIn profiles of the week, and our Slack community and social media became really important sources of support, news, and job posts. In addition, we launched our speakers database in response to the large number of panels we were seeing at events all over the world. In 2021, we continued to build on these programs, launching our third round of the mentorship cohort, as well as a new regional ambassadors program. We also worked on the registration and rebranding in preparation for our launch, which we're celebrating today. So in 2022, International Women's Day, 3 years after it all began, we'd like to celebrate our rebranding, our new website, and our registration as an official entity.
So none of this would have been possible with a team of very dedicated and motivated individuals. So in the past 3 years, we've been grown into a global community of more than 3,700 women plus working in the geospatial domain, coming from 91 countries, and we have more than 22,000 followers on social media. As I said, none of this would have been possible without the dedication and time investment of a group of very motivated or highly motivated and dedicated individuals. This is at the moment an overview of the Women Plus in Geospatial leadership team, which currently covers 12 nationalities and operates across 10 different countries.
So what's new? We're now Women Plus in Geospatial, and we want to highlight that people from underrepresented genders, not just women, and allies are welcome to join the network. We are also now registered as an asset-locked community interest company in the United Kingdom. This means that any revenues that come into the company will stay within the company and be used for the benefit of our community. So the next question is, who is this community? So this is our community interest statement, which we use to register. And our activities will provide benefit to people from underrepresented gender backgrounds. That means women, transgender, and non-binary people who work or study in the geospatial domain around the world. And we aim to promote gender equality in the geospatial industry and academia by providing a safe space for professionals and students to network and connect. We want to organize events that will enhance the career development of our community. And we want to promote an inclusive geospatial industry.
We would like to say a big thank you for many supporters along the way and for during the past 3 years. We would like to specifically mention some early supporters. Without their help and support at the beginning, it wouldn't have been possible to kick off the network. And among those are Claudia Vitolo and Maria Arias de Reina, Caroline Robinson and Barbara Moreno. A specific thank you we also would like to say to GeoPlace and Burn the Book. GeoPlace allowed us or sponsored the development of our new brand. So everything you see from our new logo has been sponsored by GeoPlace, and it was developed by the design company Burn the Book. We also would like to thank you, Terry Gregarious, who is a professional coach, and he volunteered last year and did a very great team development workshop for the volunteers at Women Plus in Geospatial last year. And then we also got a very helpful legal advice from Francisca Rocky, from Black Geographers, Emily Barnes, Miriam Gonzalez, and David Lane. Alongside these individuals, there were also quite a few organizations and sibling networks who supported us the past 3 years, which we listed here. And especially with the sibling networks, we already collaborated during many events, and we also wish to do so this and continue this in the future. But of course, over the past 3 years, we can't even mention all the volunteers and speakers who have donated their time and expertise and resources the past 3 years to actually help us to grow this network and also to come where we are today. So our activities in Women Plus and Geospatial are really there to inspire, unite, and empower the current and next generation of geospatial professionals. And all our activities in the network are aligned under these 3 pillars. And what these 3 pillars are it will be presented now by our pillar leads, our Inspire, Unite, and Empower leads, who share with us a short welcome note as well.
Hello, I'm Sharon Omoja and I'm the Inspire Portfolio Lead. Under Inspire Portfolio, we highlight the achievements of women and other underrepresented gender in the geospatial industry. And I also believe that every Women Plus is an inspiration and in turn can inspire or get inspired by fellow Women Plus in the network. And we are going to work towards inspiring the next generation of geospatial professionals in the various regions that we have.
Hello everyone, my name is Alina Vizirano, and together with Women Plus in Geospatial throughout 2022, I am taking on the mission as the Unite Portfolio Lead to advocate for diversity and inclusion in the space and geospatial sector. We will be providing resources and career support to women and underrepresented genders, helping them reach senior and leadership positions in the geospatial industry and creating opportunities for personal and professional growth.
Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Whitelaw. I'm the Empower lead for the Women Plus in Geospatial. With the Empower pillar, we seek to provide tools and support to help each other grow. The Empower pillar includes notable programs such as the Mentorship Program, the Speakers Database, as well as some newer initiatives such as the support groups that aim to provide assistance to learning new skills or expanding existing programs.
All right, so we will begin by sharing with you some of the activities in the Inspire portfolio, and we encourage all of you to also get inspired. So our communications and social media are part of the Inspire portfolio, starting with our Twitter and LinkedIn. Right now, we have about 8,500 followers on Twitter and over 14,000 followers on LinkedIn. And these are important channels to share news, but also highlight the achievements of Women Plus leaders. And we have a quote here from Megha Verma, who says that she was a part of the LinkedIn group since she was in university. And she said it was an inspiring page to learn and feel empowered about the work people are doing within the domain. So on LinkedIn and now also on Twitter, we have been highlighting the achievements in leadership of Women Plus globally. We have our LinkedIn profiles of the week. And since July 2020, we've profiled over 50 Women Plus. Each post gets about 4,500 views, which is a great way to really highlight and raise the profile of these wonderful Women Plus. And this initiative is led by Sharon Omoja. In addition, I'm leading the Regional Ambassadors Program, which is a group of ambassadors in different regions around the world. You can see here we have 2 ambassadors for Sub-Saharan Africa, one for Middle East and North Africa, one for Asia, one for Oceania, and one for Western Europe. And these regional ambassadors, they are the ones who are providing regional and local networking opportunities, building a team of country representatives in each of these regions. They represent Women Plus in Geospatial at events and also bring people in these regions together. And now let's learn more about the United portfolio. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is a foundation for everything that we do at Women Plus in Geospatial. We have a community code of conduct that we have all our members read through and agree to. And in addition, we have a DEI working group that has recently conducted a survey of our members internally to learn more about the challenges they are facing in the industry. In addition, we have a mailing list that is open to all to join. Members of the mailing list can also get access to our newsletter, which highlights member achievements, events, and activities.
The one resource under the United pillar, and that is very instrumental for the network, is our Slack channel. It is a safe space, so only Women Plus are allowed to join. And this Slack channel allows members to ask questions, to seek advice, to also network and get to know others with fellow Women Plus in Geospatial and with common interests, to share news and also to share job advertisements. Since 2019, over 84,000 messages have been sent on our Slack channel. Important is also for those who are joining the Slack channel, around the statistics are saying around 75% are direct messages. So what you see when you join is actually only the tip of the iceberg. So there is a really great opportunity to network and to get to know other people with the same interests you have. On the Slack space, there are around 350 active members weekly, and we have around 100 members posting every day. And now it's time to get empowered. So under our empowered pillar, it's really, as Jennifer shared, is really to get empowered to grow professionally and personally. So under this pillar, we run the WIC mentorship program. It is currently in its 3rd year. So we have the 3rd cohort. And so far, more than 250 women have participated in the program and have been empowered. We had the participants came from 56 countries, and this year we have 97 mentor relationships. We would like to share 2 quotes from the program. One is from Ariel Lowe, who is a peer mentor this year, so from 2021 to 2022. And she's saying that the women in her mentorship group have really supported her and held her also accountable in growing through monthly challenges and discussions. And the other quote is from Madeleine Han. She is a mentee in this year's program, and she was able to meet her mentor at an international industry conference, and her mentor had time for her and really boosted her confidence. So the mentorship program is a year-long program, and applications will start in September. The program has been initiated by Sabrina and is currently led by Heather Porter and Nicole Young. Another activity is under the Empower pillar is the speakers database. And this speakers database is a resource not only for speakers, but also for conference and event organizers. So it is a place where, women plus speakers from the geospatial domain and conference and event organizers can meet. So the idea is to make geospatial events and conferences more diverse, and this database makes it possible for speakers to register and share their expertise. So in what topics they are confident to speak, and conference and event organizers then can look for experts in specific fields. So far, more than 330 women plus speakers worldwide are registered. And the speakers database works. So a WIC member shared with us that she has been contacted through the database and has been invited for a podcast episode. The database has been initiated by myself, and the core developer is Ida Moriak-Monfort, and she is currently also the lead of the speakers database. And then because of the pandemic, thanks for the pandemic, we needed to be a bit more creative in how we can network, and we can also empower women plus members in the geospatial field. We initiated last year, in 2020, the WIC webinar series on career development. And since July 2020, we organized 20 webinars that really aim to share professional and personal development advice. And here's a list of some of the webinars we organized so far. So for example, a webinar on how to gain professional confidence, how to create a standout CV, or just recently, we organized a workshop on geospatial writing. And our current event lead is Esther Onyekaki Ogbu. And
so thank you, Julia, for the overview of the Empower pillar. As you can see, we have many wonderful programs, and these are all 100% run by volunteers. And so far, they have been free for anyone to join, and we want to keep it that way. And so we would like to ask you to join us and make an impact together. There are many ways you can join. We welcome you to, of course, donate, help us cover the cost of Zoom, running a website, and become a sponsor, actively support us to grow the W+G network, partner with us. Maybe we can collaborate on an event together, or have a representative of our network come and speak at something that you're planning. And of course, please spread the word. If you would like to share about our network with your colleagues or the people that you work with, we believe that we have wonderful resources that we really want to share. So let us break the bias and challenge the status quo together. Here are some next steps that you can take. Like I mentioned, we have our new website, so please check out the website and join us today. You can sign up for free, or you can also follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube, where we're live streaming right now. And if you're planning an event or you would like to speak at one, please check out the speakers database. So we are truly stronger together, and I believe, and we believe as a network, if we put all hands together, we can really forge a community where all genders can thrive. So now I'll let Julia share some thoughts about breaking the bias.
Thank you, Sabrina. So before we end our presentation, we would like to share with you some perspectives, or our perspectives on break the bias. And We would like to, or we see breaking the bias is not a one-time event. So breaking the bias is really a marathon, and it's not only happening today, but every day in the following year and also many years after. And in order to be able to break the bias, some preconditions have to be fulfilled, and we also see these preconditions aligned with our mission and vision of Women Plus in Geospatial. So for you, in order to be able to break the bias, you first have to be aware of conscious and unconscious biases, not just about gender, but also ethnicity, sexuality, among other characteristics. And so this is one of the aims our network has. We want to raise awareness of conscious and unconscious biases. And then we want to motivate all Women Plus in Geospatial, but also everyone in the geospatial domain to actively choose to challenge the status quo. Because if you want to break the bias, you have to make an active decision and choice that you want to make a change and you want to make an impact. And once you made this choice, then we can go into embracing change and become active. And some advice from our perspectives, but this is also why we're here today, and our panel will share some of their perspectives there. But we think breaking the bias is not always the easiest way. And so if you have the chance, please speak up for others and for yourself. So, and also remember, the higher you are in the hierarchy, the lower the cost is for you to speak up. So if you have a chance and if you are in a position to speak up, please speak up not only for yourself, but also for others. We also think that you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you have to sometimes also state the obvious things and also state uncomfortable realities. Also dare to disagree. So you don't have to always say yes. Also, if there is something you don't agree with, say it. And then our last advice for today, before we hand over to Denise, is actually inspired by Jane Goodall. She recently shared a quote, and she was saying that it actually doesn't take much to be considered a difficult woman, and that's why there are so many of us. And with this, we would like to say, if it's needed, also be difficult. And happy International Women's Day. And now, thank you for being here today. And now back to Denise.
Absolutely brilliant, guys. I think, you know, for me, if I look back over these last years, I've gained so much from being part of this network. And I think it's been an incredible privilege to work, I know, with both of you, but the entire team on Women in Geospatial, or Women Plus in Geospatial now, and sort of be part of that evolution and that journey. I think it's been really exciting. And I think one of the things that I've always loved is that we so often talk really positively about what we can do. We don't tend to get bogged down in the problems, and we all know that they're there, but everybody's always really about positive action and change. So I think that's been an incredible gift to our geospatial community. So I appreciate the presentation. And I know a big thank you to both of you and the co-founders for all of the hard work. I think probably many people on this, watching this, would have no idea just the sheer number of hours that all of you have given to making this a success. So very much a thank you on behalf of the community. Brilliant. Okay, if I can get the slide up with all of our fantastic panelists, we'll get into some conversation about all these things. And so with that, can I get Carolyn, Flavia, Daria, and Jeff to join us on stage, please? If you can put your cameras on and unmute yourselves, and I'll give some quick introductions here. We have got such a great panel here, and I was really sorry, but Undersiwa let us know today that she got called into a last-minute meeting. For those of you that don't know Undersiwa, she's actually just become the CEO down at the South African National Space Agency. So her time is suddenly, I think, become quite busy in that regard, but she did send her apologies for not joining with us today. So with me on stage, we have got Carolyn Akoth Ottawa, and she's in Kenya. Works for CPS in here, Transcom, and supports infrastructure analytics in the international market. She also volunteers as an operations and advocacy officer for women in GIS Kenya. And in this role, she helps organizations use data for gender equality. As well as Carolyn, we've also got Dr. Flavia de Souza Mendes, who's been participating, leading and managing projects for more than 14 years in private and public sector and forestry. Agriculture and land use. She's an active member and enthusiast of initiatives such as Ladies of Landsat, who I know also Carolyn has been, I think, involved with as well. And also Women in Copernicus as well. And this year, I think, congratulations, Flavia, you were nominated for one of the Geospatial World Rising Stars as well. So that's fantastic to have you on the panel. Next, we have Daria Ludke, who is now the CTO of the Swiss clean tech startup Uyghur, 3 times contractor of the European Space Agency, and they look at Earth observations and AI technology for clean energy production. From a Women Plus in Geospatial, Daria is a member of the mentorship program team for 3 years and has been supporting the community through her work on the Women Plus as an ambassador for Western Europe. Daria, I also have the incredible privilege. She was one of my mentees in the very first mentoring program. And I think it's such an incredible testament to have watched your career progress over the last 3 years since the first program. So it's brilliant to have you on the panel. Last and certainly not least, we have Jeff Waite, and Jeff is business manager and associate director at SNC Lavalin's award-winning Atkins UK Geospatial team. Jeff, I had such an amazing conversation with last year at GeoBusiness, mostly around the work that he has done in looking at gender balancing in his team, specifically at Atkins. He's won both the EDPM President's Award, and in 2021, he actually won a UK and Europe Integrity Award for gender balancing the geospatial analysis team at Atkins. So I know, Jeff, you're certainly one we're going to be looking to for what actions people can be taking when we're working towards our breaking the bias. So with all of those lovely introductions out of the way, and I must say that all of those bios are a short clip of everything that these amazing people are doing. So please go find them on LinkedIn, have a look further at the work that they're doing, and make sure you connect with the speakers that we've got on stage. So with that, let's get stuck into our theme for today, which is looking at bias. And let's start perhaps in the workplace. So let's look at, I know that we're coming from a number of different countries here. So if we think about those traditional biases in the workplace, what I'm keen to hear from all of you is what you see as still being problems that we haven't yet overcome in our workplace, but what have you seen work really well? What are people doing that you see as helping to address the bias in the workplace? And therefore could be something that those listening in today might be able to emulate and share in their own work environment. So Flavia, I can see your face smiling at the moment, so I might throw to you first to add some thoughts on that one.
Yes, I'm always smiley, so if you see me smiley again, it's nothing. But I think it's a good opportunity. Thank you very much. I just would like to thank you a lot for this opportunity, for being here and to share the stage with so many wonderful people here who are fighting with us together to really break the bias. And I think in my experience, I would say that there is a little bit difference between Brazil and Germany, where I am right now. So I think in Brazil right now, visibly the aggressions are more explicit. And in Germany, in my personal experience, I think they're a little bit more hidden. So I think I experience more or I see people also experience more this kind of microaggression. So that they can do a lot damage, right? Because it's very easy to explain, easy to justify, just saying like, hey, I'm sorry, it was not intention. So I think it could be something that, like, the difference that I can see a lot between Brazil and Germany.
And what I see that has been working pretty well is the implementation, for example, of gender bias training for the workers, also to the recruiters in private sector, for example, so how they can recruit people and really try to get rid of our internal bias that we have, unconscious bias, and also allyship training. So when I say about ally, it's such an important thing that we have to talk about, right? Because it's every time about like, oh, what women can do, what we can do together, but what an ally can do for us, right? And also programs, mentorship, for example, like the Women in Geospatial is also doing very good. And this can help a lot. And of course, all the initiatives, Women in Geospatial, Leagues of Landsat, Szeto of SARS, and so on. And what does not work, I wouldn't say does not work, but let's say it's a delicate thing. It's the blind recruitment process. So when you kind of take 2 CVs and you don't put the name of the person, and then you just evaluate the certifications and education and so on. And I think in the world that we are right now, we tend to value more certificates than experience. For example, just to finish, I will give you an example. Let's say that we have someone from Brazil, where I'm from, and then you have a very good CV, but the person couldn't have the opportunity to do an internship because the person has 2 jobs, has to feed the family, has to do a lot of things. And then you have someone from a rich country, in the global north, for example, who had an opportunity to do internship because could lie on the parents' financial situation, and could do a good English course. And when someone take the 2 CVs and look at that, and then they say, okay, I'm gonna give the merit to this person, but they don't know the background of that person. So I think the blind recruitment process must be improved, I would say, in that sense, because we are kind of not really highlighting the experience of these people, the resilience and everything that this person had in their life, conflict management, time management, financial management, and so on.
Brilliant. Thanks, Flavia. Jeff, I might throw to you with this, only because I know you've got an awful lot you can add, I'm sure, to this particular part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I work for a big company, and we've got lots of brilliant supports for women across the company, different types of training courses, mentorships, and so on. I mean, the thing for me, and some of what Flavia was just talking about, is for me the important thing is for people to take on personal responsibility. I'm not sure that that's necessarily happening quite as much now. I don't know whether that is because there are so much support that you think actually the system's doing that for you, but actually, the system, the support, the corporate approach, I think can only do so much when looking at particularly gender balancing, but breaking the bias. So, I mean, from my experience, it needs people to be, what works well is when people are very aware in the day-to-day about the challenges that different people, different groups face. So you're able to do something about that in the day-to-day. I mean, from my own experience, when it came to looking at the gender of the geospatial team in Atkins, this was something that I did myself. It was we started asking questions, about the recruitment process. The recruitment process was great, but actually, when you ask questions, there's so much more support that's there. So when you actually start to ask questions about, well, how many people were shortlisted, what are the male-female split, and so on, there was so much more support there when you were able to say, well, hang on, this doesn't feel quite right. And suddenly there are other teams and other people that are able to actually, help. So there's lots that works. From my experience of large companies, there's lots that works well, but it is, making sure that people don't fall into their comfort zone and rely on those systems too much.
That's great. Daria, anything you'd like to add to that conversation?
Yes, it's actually very interesting because I guess I'm the opposite on the company size spectrum compared to Jeff, with a startup sized. And probably similar, but still kind of different issues. So one thing I would like to highlight here is the first, diverse hire is always the most difficult. I think that's something that everyone who has been there can agree on. The first one is always really hard. For us, actually, I was the first woman on the team, the only woman for 2.5 years. And then after that, it actually happened really quickly. So I took charge of hiring, and all of a sudden now we have three out of 8. So it's actually a really good quota compared to the average that you see in the tech world, and especially in the startup world, which is still not as diverse as it could be. But I completely agree as well with Flavia that it's an intersectional issue, right? Of course, Women Geospatial looks at the whole issue of through a specific lens, which is mostly gender. But of course, there are other issues like sexuality, intersectionality, socioeconomic background, a lot of things that we need to consider here. So for me, kind of what works best is to start with a diverse team. I think that would be my number one takeaway, because then you do not have to go through that process of going through the issues, identifying biases in the processes, but as well on the people, because the processes are, of course, based on what the people in the company think. So that would be my number one advice. And as well, from the perspective of what it doesn't work, in my opinion, is imposed diversity. Sorry. So I think it has to be experienced. I think a lot of biases can only be understood when humans are faced with an individual who has these struggles. Because if it's kind of an anonymous, impersonal struggle, it's very hard for us to, like all of us, to be fair, to take action and change things. So I think it has to be humanized in a way, it has to be individualized, and has to be understood by all of us that we all have biases. There's literally not a bias-free person. So I think it's as well on us to self-reflect a little bit what biases we might carry in the workplace, be it gender or others.
I couldn't agree with that one more, Daria, and I think I'll build on that one in the next section, but I wanted to give Carolyn an opportunity to join this conversation as well.
Yeah, I've seen instances where people identify bias in some companies, maybe not the big practicing companies that are doing this, but small companies coming up, startups, are identifying that there's some kind of bias when it comes to pay and salaries. And an example that I'd like to give is whereby maybe a recruiter or a hiring manager is not intentionally saying they're going to pay someone less, but in most cases, your pay is commensurate to your negotiating power, or your pay is directly related to how well you can negotiate, and also based on how much you're being paid in your previous role or in your previous engagement. So in some cases where you've been working in places where you are underpaid, you're not aware that you are underpaid, and then you go into a company that pays significantly higher, but because you don't know that, you don't have that kind of information, and they have not advertised this role with a mark that they're paying maybe 60K or 100K or an amount, you ask for significantly way less, not knowing that you're actually selling yourself short. But most companies now are trying to put that information on the application itself. So this role pays between this to this range. So this is some things that companies are picking up in the geospatial field around here. And it's working. Luckily, it's working surprisingly well for people. Unfortunately, for much bigger organizations, it's still, the discussions on salary and remuneration is still a discussion that people are not having openly. And unfortunately, it's working for people who are traditionally being used to getting lower or getting lesser.
Excellent. Thank you, Carolyn. So I think this actually leads really nicely to a question that we got in here from Szeto here. And the person said, you know, I've had women say to me, I've never been impacted by gender bias or discrimination in my workplace. It's never happened to me. And the person said, you know, how would you respond to that without denying what their perception of the lived experience is? And I think, Carolyn, it's interesting that you say, you know, you don't know that you're underpaid. until someone points it out to you in that regard. So I'm curious to sort of hear, how would you, being that you're all very well informed people, how would you kind of respond to somebody in that sense who's kind of like, well, I don't see it, I don't see, this hasn't happened to me. How do you think you might respond to that?
I don't know. It's actually something that happens. And while I was just reading about the theme for this year's International Women's Day, I saw a lot of such comments that this is probably something that used to happen. People who are being denied opportunity, or other women who are being denied opportunities, probably from going for survey work or field work or work or tasks that are considered more labor intensive. It's something that happens for someone who's currently experiencing that, and they feel like they have not personally gone through bias or experienced bias or spoken to someone who's experienced bias. They should probably acknowledge privilege, because they are certainly very, very privileged to not be in a circle where someone is experiencing that. In the example I've given you, where you think you're being paid enough based on your experience and based on your little knowledge or lack of knowledge, because you haven't spoken to people enough to actually know that there's more happening in the industry. For someone who feels like they haven't experienced bias, it is important to step out of your circle and move to a different circle. Maybe not move to a different circle, but expand your circle. Talk to more people in your industry, because a lot is happening.
I love that answer. Love that answer, Carolyn. I might actually leave this one just there. Actually, no, Flavia, go. I know you've got a comment to add to there.
I just would like to add what Catalin said. Very, very interesting, Catalin, because I think also another thing that we could talk about is this, what we call internalized sexism, right? So women unconsciously absorb these beliefs, right? When men says like, oh, women are less powerful, women are not so intelligent, they're like this, they're like that. And I think this kind of can lead women to think about that. So they think that it's normal, that they are not having this, I don't know, microaggressions or something like that, but they do have. So it's also, for example, why we have these stupid things between like a competition between women, right? So this kind of internalized sexism make the woman lead like to mistreat, underestimate, make distance themselves to other women, and talk bad about women instead of talking to her. They are not talking about her. They are talking, instead of talking to her, they are talking about them. So I think this goes in more or less the same way that Caroline said. So we also have this thing that is kind of intrinsic. They are putting in our minds, and we are not able to see that. It's also a little bit lack of empathy, which we have everywhere, in every area in our lives.
Yeah. Daria, I saw your hand up.
Yes, I just want to add that I think what connects both of these statements from Caroline and from Flavia is expectations. So I think less represented people have, in general, lower expectations, because we lack role models, we lack references, we lack something to measure what is right, what is wrong, what's appropriate.
Yeah.
So someone who has, well, by gender designation at birth, lower expectations because of their salary, for example, of course, you are satisfied if you then reach these expectations, right? Because they are lower in the first place. And I think this plays a big role. That, for me, this is at least where it starts. So you just expect lower things. You expect a little bit less, so you expect something different. It doesn't also have to be less, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you meet the bar, you're happy. But you might not know what's out there, as Caroline says. So you don't know that you can do different things and you can be more.
Excellent. Jeff, I don't know if you want to add anything in there. Did you ever come across anybody with that sort of a response when you were heading out trying to make the changes you were trying to make in your team?
Not particularly, but I mean, it's interesting, it's interesting what Daria was just saying there, because that to me just underlines the importance for being able to see people in leadership, women in leadership positions, being able to know what's although there is no glass ceiling, that it all comes down to your own skill and ability. I think that's important. I mean, there's, going back to the original question about, I've not seen any bias, that's great, but actually it's interesting once you start digging under the surface that there can be, maybe unintended bias, almost put into the building in which you work. The classic one, of course, being men and women's toilets share the same footprint, but actually what men and women need in those toilets are different, and therefore allow different numbers of people to actually be able to use them. So there's very interesting things going on, whether it's in the fabric of the building, or whether it is, the unconscious bias that potentially aren't being picked up on.
Couldn't agree more. Now, I'm conscious of time. Now, I was really going to kind of delve a bit into kind of us as a profession here, and talk a little bit about what we can do, I think, as data professionals. Unfortunately, I think we've kind of run out of a little bit of time on that space. So what I would say to everybody online is, you're a geo professional. I'd love to hear your opinions about that out on Twitter. Put your comments in sort of LinkedIn. If you're on the Slack channel with Women in Geospatial, love to see your thoughts about what we can be doing as data professionals, and the sort of responsibility that we have in that space, I think, at times to look at bias, look at what we're doing with data, look who's in our data or who's not in our data at times, and sort of the impacts on different populations with that. But to close off, what I know I'm really keen, and you've all given some fantastic examples of action already in the space, but each one of these events that I run on an annual basis, and I've hosted many now over the last decade, I love to kind of finish with asking all my speakers to give your one nugget of wisdom. If you're talking to probably a good few hundred people today, this afternoon, on this topic of bias and in Women in Geospatial, what's the one action that you'd love to sort of have people take away? Maybe it's something to take into their office and their workplace, or simply how they talk to somebody else. But what would be sort of your one suggestion for everybody to head out with today on International Women's Day and change or question or do? What would your big one be? Who would like to start us off? You have to pick names, I know. I'm going to go back to Jeff because I know he just wrote down notes.
I mean, look, for me, it is very much about being curious and about asking why. I mean, it's been covered by other people talking about and in the slides, but it does amaze me that if we hadn't kind of looked into the gender balance of the team, that potentially very little may have actually changed. And by actually starting conversations on this, you find that lots of other people are very engaged and and want to help as well, want to help you change, do things differently, appeal to a wider range of people. So for me, the takeaway, or what I'd encourage people to be, is curious. Look at in your own teams what the makeup is of men to women, ask why that is, challenge the status quo.
Excellent. And I've just had it pointed out to me by my organisers that I actually have another 15 minutes or so, more than I thought I did, so we can actually keep on talking. So I'm glad I did do this segue now, though, because Jeff, your answer was fantastic, and I want to pick up, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot, being our kind of one male that's on our panel today, because we did get a quite specific question that came in on Slido, and it's one that I have from a number of my male colleagues who are incredibly supportive of diversity, and actually at the moment feel like somewhat they don't know how to be part of the dialogue, and they don't sort of know, I think they feel at times a little afraid to kind of get involved in the conversation. They're the typical white male. And so I think there's a kind of almost scary element for them that's in there. So given your experience, I guess I'm keen to know, for all the men that are watching this today, how did you kind of get over that? Or did you feel that in sort of heading out towards doing what you've done?
No, I mean, so for me, once I started to look into the figures, it was obvious that something wasn't right. And then I had a conversation with a colleague, Dr. Naira Chamberlain, talking about, you start to get into questions about, well, actually, what what is the gender makeup of the geospatial profession? Should the team reflect that, et cetera, et cetera? And the answer is no. You should just go for a 50-50 kind of balance. So for me, it's a problem to be solved. You know, it's as simple as that. I've been lucky enough to work all my life in teams that have had a really good male-female split. I've had great female bosses. So for me, it is the normal kind of situation, you know, to work in. So I don't know if that changes anything for me. I think the bottom line is just get involved. Don't let, you know, kind of concern about how to do it hold you back. The best thing you can do is get involved and support.
Excellent. Thank you. Hopefully that answers the person who asked the question. So I'm going to switch back a little bit then into actions. And it's so nice to see everyone smiling, because I think I would agree, Jeff, you know, what I always talk about these days is, for me, diversity is the secret sauce. You know, what you want is a really diverse team to help you make the best solutions that are out there. And that's, you know, transgender, that's female, that's male, that's, you know, who, you know, whatever that needs to be doesn't actually need to come into account. What you want is the most skilled people and the best experts in working on your solutions. And I've certainly, without doubt, over 20 years of career, seen the value of that multiple times, and seen the impact when it's not, you know, seeing when you make very serious mistakes in projects when you don't have that diversity there. So in terms of our actions, and we can go through some more ideas here, and hopefully we may end up with a bit of time to talk about our geospatial profession here too. But Flavia, did you want to take us away with some takeaways? What would be the one action you'd like to tell everybody to go out and do?
I think I would here highlight a little bit more the importance of how to be a good ally. Yeah, I think everyone, we have it's very clear, like what we have to do, more or less, of course. But I think when we think about the ally, gender inequality was not created by women. So I think the ally, they need to get used to the feeling of being uncomfortable, because for many years they were directly benefiting from social structures, so better payment, opportunities, leadership position. So it's okay. You have to get used to this uncomfortable feeling. And being ally is not only a hashtag. So learn, listen, be there, and act. Not only supporting a woman, but also act. So I think this would be my main message today, more for the allies than for the woman. I mean, and of course, for the woman, for me, the most important thing that has helped me a lot was supporting network. It's the Ladies of Land said, and all the women groups, it's just incredible how much this can help us to really go through all the challenges. Yes, I think this would be my message.
Brilliant. Carolyn, what about you? What would you kind of thinking about today and coming on and talking with us? What would you like to most have the community walk away and do?
To learn about other people's culture and practices, both at organizational level, at personal level, like in different settings. Because the more I interact with people locally, regionally, globally, the more I realize that my struggles are not someone else's struggles, and what I consider as probably someone else is having it good, they're actually not having it good. It's just an assumption that I have that they have it good because I don't know. So yeah, that's my key takeaway. And Flavia said something that I'd really like to sort of speak on. She sort of mentioned something about we have a sort of empowering agenda, and other people will feel like we are probably doing a bit of extra empowering, and another agenda would sort of feel like we are focusing a lot on this and sort of forgetting the men or the boys. I've received a couple of questions around that, and my response is usually we are empowering women and empowering the other gender because they were the gender that was not experiencing or was not getting the advantages of the society as it is. So that's why platforms such as these were created. So that does not mean that we cannot go ahead and say we can create a similar platform to support other people. Like it's really not a competition. We are moving together as a society to encourage the growth and development of everyone. The goal is not to leave anyone behind. The goal is not to win against anyone, but to move together to achieve equality and equity.
I love that. I love that it's not a competition, because I think that's exactly what it is. It's not a them and us. It's not anything like that. It is all about all of us trying to work together. So I think that's beautifully put, Carolyn. Thank you. Daria, what about you?
Completely agree with what has been said before. And I think a nice way to wrap this up from another perspective, because Flavia is absolutely right. There has to be actions. Carolyn is right. There have to be shared experiences and differences to appreciate as well. But my main takeaway would be to have conversations and build connections, because we do need that exchange in the first place to take actions, right? And to make anything happen in the end. We can't do that together as a community, which is why I believe Women Plus in Geospatial can have the impact that it has, and even more in the future. And I do believe this also ties in really well with the work the mentorship team has been doing, right? Because this is really about sharing yourself, sharing your experiences, struggles you face, but also the wins that you have with others, and just acknowledge these differences in your experiences, identify biases you potentially have. And again, it's much easier to tackle them if you have a face connected to it, if you have a story. So I do believe engaging in conversations, listening actively, but also sharing actively could hugely contribute to making things better for everyone in the end.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm going to amplify just that mentorship thing. So certainly for me, I think it's a privilege to be a mentor. It's one of those amazing things when someone actually turned around and asked me to be one myself. And I was like, initially kind of what I always say to everybody, don't be scared to put yourself forward and do that. I think it's such an incredible gift you can give another person to be that person that helps them, to be that person that listens and has the conversation with somebody, is there even just to bounce ideas off, and so what I would say to everybody on the call from my perspective is, if you even remotely think that you've got the time to give some of that to somebody, please join the program. Whether you're male, white, whatever gender you associate yourself with, that the program is in always desperate need. And I think at times we often kind of think, I'm not a leader. I'm not a person that can do that. What I would say is you absolutely are. The fact that you've taken the initiative to call in today to better inform yourself shows that you're somebody that can be a mentor for someone else. So please do consider getting involved and looking at those opportunities to mentor, whether it's with the Women Plus in Geospatial program or the many, many, many others. Often there's internal organization programs you can be involved with. I think is totally through. Daria, what did you want to add?
Just to quickly add, because we're always lacking mentors. Like every year, that's our limitation, especially in the Asian Pacific region. So I want to have a specific shout out there. This would be extremely helpful for especially the mentees who didn't find a mentor last year's cohort. And Denise, you're absolutely right. And what I want to add as well is that your experience is valuable. So it's very easy for us to take the experiences we have for granted, be it experiences in conflict resolution or time management, as was said at the beginning. It's all valuable for someone. And then it's kind of our job as the program to make the right match, that whatever you experience can help someone else. But there is no such thing as underqualified for mentorship. We all have something to share.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. Excellent. Okay, so we do have a bit more time after Denise is not checking her times between CET and GMT type time zones. You would have thought she got this right after all the years worth of international work. So we can delve into this. So, we've talked about the workplace stuff, which we always do when we're talking about women in geospatial. But for me, I got kind of almost really excited when I saw this bias topic, because I just kind of went, this is a real thing for us as geospatial professionals. I kind of look at our world of geography, and it has such an incredible role to play in how we understand where there is inequity in the world, how we understand what we're doing with different interventions in the world. You certainly look at things like the Sustainable Development Goals and all of these elements here. So I'm going to take this kind of quite out into a macro sort of way of thinking here. But, I really look at our profession and what we do, and some of us just think of it as a job. It's my interesting map thing that I do. But what I would kind of say to everybody is that our map thing that we do is an incredibly powerful tool. It is also one that is quite susceptible to bias. And there have been great examples where we've done data collection and, people are like, oh, I've got a total sample of the population, it's all collected off mobile data. And then suddenly actually someone points out that it's only one gender that typically owns the mobile phone in every family. So you know a lot about them, one part of the family, but you don't know about the rest of the family. So I'm keen to unpack this a little bit with you all and sort of look at, I can see Flavia nodding her head kind of going, I totally get this. I think this, for me personally, I feel like that's a responsibility we have as data professionals, is to be conscious of this. What I'm interested in with you is that something in your work that you've done? Is that an experience you've had where you've really had to sit back and think about the bias within your data? And do you think that we're talking about this enough in our profession to sort of look at what we're doing with data and whether there is bias in there or not? And, I guess I'm keen to understand whether you think that this is something we could take on more within our profession and understand better within that. I'm going to go to Flavia because I can see her nodding her head and she's clearly got some experience in this space.
Thank you very much, Denise. It's just funny. When I say funny, it's not funny, but because I talk all the time about that with my colleagues from my research group. The name is RSAT, and we are a group of Brazilians research, and then we do our research regarding all the tropical biomes in Brazil. And we have seen that a lot, not only how you can be biased with your data, but trying to address the issue of what we call science colonialism. It's so much into our science community. So sometimes people forget how diversity is helping solving issues in climate change. So climate change will mainly affect the underrepresented groups. So these groups who are in these places, they need to have a voice in the solution. Not only the data when you are addressing this or that interview, but they need to have a voice in the solution, because if they will not have, we are doing again colonialism and telling them what they should do. So it's not only about how you deal with the data, but how you include this local community in the chain of the analyze or process that you are doing in your mapping and so on. So I remember once I heard Gala saying that there was a kind of I think it was in Australia, that they were adopting indigenous communities practice, like the indigenous farm management, and how this helped solving a problem in Australia. And this kind of helped a lot to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in Australia. So sometimes I think we really have to get back to this local community who are really being affected by the climate change and who really have the knowledge of how to solve that problem. Sometimes we are fighting with data, with satellite image, or what kind of satellite we should use, what kind of machine learning we should use. But sometimes the solution is there. So we have to address more to these people, not only regarding, again, the bias in the data, how we proceed the data, but also how we try to find the solution for what we are addressing.
Thanks, Flavia. Jeff, I'm curious, you work for a huge organization. Atkins is gigantic, and the variety of geodata that I imagine you work with must be huge. Is this a topic? Is it a thing that sort of gets dealt with very much within what you do?
It's something that we're very aware of, and we try and build into what we do. I mean, let's face it, in the geospatial world, a lot of the data that we receive from other organizations, and there needs to obviously be a certain amount of sense checking about how the data was actually created and so on. So in some cases, it's not just what you're doing, but it's what other people that supplied you with the data have done. So understanding, the journey of the data is really important. I mean, it is fascinating. We, all the companies in my industry, we look at kind of designing towns and cities and different types of infrastructure, and it's so interesting seeing things start to change and seeing people take into account different, the types of people that live in these places, rather than just, assuming it's almost kind of one type of person. The classic is, designing a city around the commute, which can be male dominated, rather than the school run to work, which can be, female dominated, and the difference in services and focus and investment that there is on that initial commute, even though it doesn't make up, a massive part of the overall journeys that potentially are undertaken in a city. So once you start to dig down, into the data, there's been work on the different ways that different people actually travel, the different types of journeys. So where, again, difference between men and women, where people are comfortable walking, and that, potentially women will walk further if the street lighting is better. So being able to take all of that and actually build that into then your design, is fascinating. It's interesting. It's brilliant to be a part of kind of an emerging change. I don't know whether it's happening enough across all schemes, but it's certainly the type of thing that we started to see become more and more important.
Excellent. Daria, what about you with looking at the sort of Earth observation? I mean, yours is probably, a bit more looking at ice and things like that, but I know you've had a lot of experience working back with the UN and other areas with sort of Earth observations and those sorts of things. From your perspective, did you sort of see that surface as conversation, talking about sort of how we work as geospatial practitioners?
To be honest, not actively. As I said before, the Earth observation community is a little bit less affected by this, especially if you purely work with satellite data or other information. But actually, unfortunately, no. The first time that I was made aware of this issue in general was when I read the Invisible Women book. And I think there's like a whole section on how cities are built for men in the end, and how kind of the commute is different. But since we looked at data from a specific angle, and only had kind of families tracked, and as you said, then often the person with the technology is the one being tracked, actually blew my mind a little bit when I learned of it.
Awesome. Carolyn, what about you?
Until very recently, I hadn't experienced this. But just now we're running a project where we're trying to look at assessment of public transit, and how different people in the population are being affected. So typically when you run such a survey, you might not try and see how many women responded, how many people living with disability responded, how many different people responded to this survey. But now I'm actually aware that you need to go looking for different people to respond to this survey, because typically if you walk to a central business district and you're looking for this kind of information, more often than not you'll find most people being similar responding to this survey. So eventually at the end of your data collection exercise, you might find that you sort of have similar responses. So that means you're locking out a very big part of your population. I also wanted to highlight that there's I was just trying to look it up so I can share the link with people, or like a resource for that. There's a course that I did sometime last year that was being run by Data for SDGs. So they were typically looking at gender data and how to support yourself as an individual who works around with data to identify data gaps in a data set. It was really nice, really eye-opening.
So interesting listening to everyone's different spaces. I assume all of you have probably been through some sort of tertiary education at some sort, university, those sorts of things. Was this a topic that got talked about there when you were looking at your GIS and looking at data there? Do you think that's something that we should be talking about? Is that something that should be more in the education space instead of learning about data when we're doing that? Generally, maybe. You're allowed to say no. You can completely disagree with me and say no, Denise. It's a practice thing.
No, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, to be honest, once we start talking about universities, I think there's quite a lot that's not being taught. But in particular, the bias, unconscious or otherwise, in the data that's used, and then the damage that can do, that it feeds into other things and other purposes which potentially wasn't originally collected for. So it's it's something that people really need to be aware of. I mean, and it's something that we're looking for more. When we look to go out and capture data, the male female response and being able to look at data by sex is something that we're starting to do more and more. And there needs to be more awareness. And let's face it, as you're getting it into the university program will mean that the workforce then starts to take that on board as they would with anything else that they've learned.
So I think, for me with that, if you're a student watching this today, maybe that's something you can take away and go and ask your lecturer about. So if you're a student of GIS from a university somewhere, maybe go back in and say, I've just watched this on Women in Geospatial, and I think this is a topic we need to talk about, and really try and bring that forwards with discussion there. Okay, so we've covered so many different topic areas here at this point, and we are coming to sort of a closing end of the conversation and topics here. For me, I've learned so much today. I've heard you talk about problems that need to be solved. I've heard all sorts of different descriptions about learning about people's culture. For me, was a really, really important one. I think if I look, I know that I heard someone use the word privilege. I think you're right. Yeah, for me, I've looked across my career and I've had such a privilege of being able to see other cultures. But I've had that opportunity to really get out, if you like, and be in other countries, see these things. What I was kind of wondering is, of all of you, and I know a number of you have done that too, if you're someone that hasn't been able to do that, how would you encourage someone to kind of learn about different cultures? Are there books that you'd recommend? I think, Carolyn, that was a fantastic suggestion of the SDGs course in there as well. How would you encourage someone to kind of go and expand their knowledge and experience, to make themselves uncomfortable, if you like? Is there a movie that you've watched? So I think here is there a nugget of where someone could go and learn more and maybe make themselves uncomfortable and experience culture in a different way? Has anyone got a burning suggestion they'd like to make for the audience? Made you all think.
I'm not sure this is a burning suggestion, but it's just a suggestion that I'd like to make to the audience. Well, on top of trying to read books and watch movies, I think volunteering has really worked for me. Volunteering for different organizations. You don't have to physically be a volunteer for an organization, but you can virtually volunteer and support different people in different places, either locally, at a regional level, at a global level. I mean, that's where you get to meet a lot of people. You get to learn about what you think works for them, but it doesn't work for them. You really learn a lot when you meet more people.
I like that suggestion. I would agree. In all the organizations, they're fantastic things to get involved with. Flavia, you next.
I think it's a very good suggestion that Carolyn said. Volunteering is always it. I think for me was the same. Even though I came from a different background, I think we can always learn wherever we are, whatever we are doing, whatever our conditions. We can always learn. So I think what helped me a lot when I was a little bit younger was talking to people. So I think talking to people, listen to them, trying to share what you know. They share with you what they know. I think this kind of thing, it has been very inspired and important for me. And nowadays that I'm here, that I'm not more in the situation before in Brazil, I see that talking to people, it's wonderful, because you kind of give back what someone did in the back times for you too. So you kind of learn different realities in different continents. So I would add, apart from the volunteering now with COVID times, I think talking to people virtually, it has been very good for me, and I think for everyone.
I like that suggestion. Daria, what about you? Have you got a suggestion for anybody? You did have a good book suggestion before.
Yeah, I still suggest that book, but otherwise, I just completely agree with Caroline and Flavia, as we said before. I love how this is becoming like a whole ad for mentorship. Just saying, it's very nice to see. But no, I think they're both absolutely right. It's about engaging, and I think it also depends where your comfort zone is. So if your comfort zone is very, very small, just find something you're passionate about. If maybe volunteering for an organization like ours is a little bit too big, then maybe, I don't know, go to a foreign restaurant and have a chat with a chef. Let them talk about their spices and their culture and where they come from. I mean, it's like a small thing that almost anyone can at least try to do, and it doesn't have to be a massive step all of a sudden, right? So different levels of engagement are all completely valid.
I like that suggestion. Jeff, what about you?
I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. There are, fundamentally, it is about talking to people, and talking to them, as Daria was saying, on that personal level, to actually get to know them, as an individual. I mean, I've always felt that, GIS, geospatial, earth sciences and so on, it always felt to me that people that have done those courses tend to have a bit more appreciation of different cultures because of the subject that's been taught at university. And I've seen that, there are teams in SNC Lavalin, geospatial teams in the US, Canada, Asia Pacific and so on. And it's very interesting to see how much we've got in common because of our interest and our love for geography, maps, place, and so on. But I mean, I think the two things from me, travel if you can, let's face it, it's the best way of seeing how different people live and what and what lives are like, and read. Absolutely, I think it's important to make sure you read different views on a particular thing. You're not getting an echo, your own thoughts fed back to you. But yeah, they would be my recommendations.
And all excellent recommendations. The only thing I think I would add there to everybody is, when you have those conversations, don't walk in with a preconceived idea. I think it's really easy to sort of listen to the media and watch and build up this sort of perception, if you like, of what someone's going to be because of the country they come from, or because of the organization they might come from as well. So I would add to everybody's excellent suggestions, when you're doing the talking, make sure you walk in with an open mind. That means that your perception of what might be the situation might be changed in the process of what you're listening to as well. With that was perfectly on time now. Now I know we're actually on time. So a huge thank you to all of our panelists today. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I could have gone down so many different avenues, I think, of dialogue here. But I know that our audience will be walking away from today with a good set of actions and things that they can take on to be able to do this as well. So I think that's excellent from my perspective. So thank you, everybody. And with that, I would like to introduce Esther to the stage. So if I can get our panelists to switch their cameras and their microphones off, I'll get Esther on stage. And in this spirit of action and the next steps we're all going to do, Esther is going to tell us about what we're able to do with Women in Geospatial and the upcoming events you might be able to get involved with. So Esther, take it away.
Thank you so much, Denise. Wow, I hope everyone in the audience is as excited and as pumped as I am. So my name is Esther Onyekachi Ogbu. I'm the events lead at the Women Plus in Geospatial, and I'm also the Deputy Director for Strategy and Business Development at Zambos Geospatial Limited. It's an honor to be a woman in geospatial. Listening to all of the things that were said today from Jeff, Daria, Caroline, and Flavia, it's so much of an inspiration. I think one of my takeaways is actually that make sure you volunteer. So even if you can't travel, get into volunteering organizations in your immediate community to be able to meet a lot of other people. So if you're as pumped as I am and you want other ways to be able to get involved in Women Plus in Geospatial, we have a number of amazing events that are coming up in the following months. In April, we have a building up your speaker portfolio. This is going to focus on our speaker database to show some of the women who have benefited on being in that database, and also talk about their experiences at some of these conferences and speaking opportunities. While in May, we have two events. One will be featuring at the Living Planet Symposium in Bonn. We'll be having a networking breakfast, and we'll also be having a personal development virtual session from a really, really great personal development coach that will talk about the 3 mental muscles and the concept of inner saboteurs. In June, our mentorship team last year launched the They Map the Path campaign, which was highlighting women in geospatial, talking about their journeys, and also featuring other women who have also influenced them in their journey. So we'll be having the second edition of that event this year in June. And in July, we'll be having a fireside chat with 2 amazing members of the Women Plus in Geospatial community as well. If you like to speak on something specific, or if you like to share something specific with the community, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if you want to join the community as well and take advantage of all of these things that we've shared, please visit the website and follow the membership form then. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. Thank you, Denise.
No worries. Thanks, Esther. So just in wrap up with everybody today, I know there's so much information and knowledge that we've shared, and I know that we've got all of these upcoming events that are happening as well. Esther, while I've got you on screen, I was sitting there, you gave some of your reflections there as well. Can I get you to unmute? I was going to get you to I guess add some more reflections in here. For me, you know, some of my biggest takeaways that I took, and I always get something new. Every year you do International Women's Day, what I realized is you could do this for your entire life. You'll still learn something new every time you do these events. But for me, I think the big thing that really stuck with me was people's culture, and sort of that being open and learning about cultures in here. I'm curious for you, and I know you're a great volunteer with Women in Geospatial. What's the one thing you're going to take away from, you think, today that you might do differently, or you might do more of, or you might sort of change? Was there a particular action that came out for you, and sort of was that the thing you're going to do?
I'll say it's the volunteering, really. Right. But then the other thing that also stuck with me was something Caroline said about it not being a competition, right? Because I've been in certain environments where I'm talking about how we need to push women more, we need to push this underrepresented genders more. And the men in the room sort of raise an eyebrow and say, oh, but we need to have men in geospatial communities. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be a competition. That we're talking about it, we're trying to push it forward, doesn't mean we want to push you guys back, but we just need more people to be aware and to also join that. And then the other thing from Daria was when she mentioned about having broad conversations with people and listening and sharing actively. So to be able to be involved, so more like, rather than there's a tendency to want to share, right? But it's also very important to actually listen and know what do they actually want, what do we actually need to be putting out there, rather than just doing something from our own perspective. So I think those are the major ones for me.
And I think I would entirely agree with all of that. So that's a perfect note for us to end on. So hopefully all of you are feeling inspired and empowered and keen to get out there and be the change in the world. As Sabrina and Julia all said, and Olive in the first part of our event today, you know, we can't do this without you. You know, this is a community effort. It's a network that we are all part of, and it needs all of us. And as Carolyn said, this is not a competition. You know, this is about all of us working together to make sure that our geospatial profession and the data professions out there can be the best we can be. And I think really realize the value of what we do and how we can change the world with that. And so with that, I would encourage you all to go and have a look at the new website. You know, I'll make a cheeky plug and say too, we are a not-for-profit organization as well. Please, if you felt inspired today to financially donate, that's going to only assist the organisation to continue doing the work that we are doing. And with that, I will say happy International Women's Day, everybody, wherever you are calling in from. And I really hope you have a brilliant rest of the day and week.